Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about criticism and how exactly we define a good critic versus a bad critic. What exactly makes those two categories? Now originally I was planning to do a Damn Fans advice video talking about how you as a writer can deal with criticism and use it to improve on your own writing and your own art. But I also thought that it would be interesting to do a little analysis on how we see criticism. So for a lot of people, I think that there's this mindset that as soon as a critic that you're following disagrees with you on whether or not you like or dislike a movie, you hated a movie, but for some reason this critic praises it as if it's the best movie on earth, and then you figure to yourself, well, I can't trust this guy for good recommendations because clearly he recommended a movie that I hated, and therefore you don't follow them anymore. Which to some extent is fair. For a lot of people, they want to be following critics that they overall agree with so that they can know what types of movies they'll like or dislike. But there are ways to determine whether or not you'll like or dislike a movie based on just listening to their critique, regardless of a critic's own personal feelings on that. Or at least if that critic is a good critic. You see, I don't think that you have to agree with a critic to get a good critique from the person. I think it's more dependent on how they're critiquing whatever they're critiquing. There are all kinds of different people in the world. A lot of them are critics and write reviews for different types of stuff, and they all have different opinions on whether or not what they read or watched was good. Our responsibility as a watcher of these critics is not to agree with whatever they say, but to analyze the different opinions on the media at question and determine for ourselves whether or not that would be something we would enjoy. You see, I think a good critic is not someone who simply agrees with you. A good critic is someone who can tell you how they feel about something and explain why it is they feel that way. People like to write off a lot of other people saying that they're just nitpicking or biased, and yes, a review isn't supposed to be unbiased per se. It's not really possible to be unbiased. Of course we all have our opinions. Of course we all have our personal reasons for why we hate or like something. But not all of us can explain why that reason is. For example, those of you who watch my videos, you know that I'm not really very good with horror. I have a pretty sour taste in my mouth from horror because, first of all, I get very queasy very easily, and a lot of horror these days has a good bit of gore in there, which I can't really stomach. So it's not really enjoyable for me to watch those films, or at least it's not as enjoyable for me as it would be for someone who doesn't have that problem. So of course I'm always going to have a bias against seeing those gross, gory scenes. Of course I'm not going to really like it. So if you hear a review from me and I say that this scene was disgusting, you should also take into account that I have a lower tolerance for gross stuff. What was disgusting for me might not be as disgusting for you. And of course, going back to haha, you're nitpicking and biased, I win, bye-bye. The idea of nitpicking is the idea that you're taking something small and blowing it out of proportion as if this is a huge deal on whether or not the media question is good. But since we're all different and we all have our personal opinions, you also have to understand that what you think is nitpicking might not feel like nitpicking to that person. Like if you're saying that I'm nitpicking for being queasy over those gross horror scenes, it might not be a big deal for you, but it is for me and for people like me who can't stand that stuff, which is why I pointed out. See where I'm going with this? There's a wide variety of opinions, and if you're listening, it doesn't mean that you automatically agree with those opinions. Take everything with a grain of salt. Think for yourself. Now, going into the area of what is constructive criticism, what is bad criticism, and what is just being an asshole. If you're just doing nothing but insulting the person who made the piece of media and not actually saying that there's anything wrong with the media itself, then no one can really take anything from that criticism. as to whether or not they would like it, you know? And then there are critics who just say that something is bad. You know, they point out specific scenes and they say it's bad, but they don't really explain why they feel like it's bad. I mean, it is one step further to explain that you don't like something and explain the specific parts that you don't like. But you also have to verbally articulate why exactly you don't like what you don't like, so that we can understand, as we're watching your review, the full picture of your experience watching the movie or the comic or whatever. And then, of course, constructive criticism. A lot of people think that constructive criticism is just like nice critiques, like you're being very gentle with the person that you're letting down. I don't really view it that way. I more so view constructive criticism as a more deeper, in-depth critique. Like I said, you can explain why you felt the way that you did, why you disliked certain parts of the media in question, and you can even offer out your own opinions on how you thought it should have gone, what you would have enjoyed more if it had gone in this direction. And in doing this, you're giving the author a better idea of how they went wrong and why they didn't please you as an audience member. And even the audience who's watching your review to see whether or not it's something worth checking out, they'll also have a better understanding of what types of media you like personally and come to a better understanding of why you did or didn't like this movie or media in question. And in understanding why you didn't like it, they can understand whether or not they would like it. Now, going further, there's a lot of critics out there who notice things that a lot of audience members wouldn't have noticed, the writer wouldn't have even noticed, and maybe other critics don't notice. The amount of attention to detail that a critic has when viewing something that they're going to review is pretty important, because it helps them notice plot holes or things that don't really quite match up, things that contradict itself, characters going out of character, things that some watchers might not notice, but others might be incredibly bothered by. If you have a critic who didn't pay that much attention while watching the movie, and they make a review and they say, it was such a good movie, there was like absolutely nothing wrong with it, it was 100% perfect, and then the audience figures, well, they recommended it, and they go to watch it themselves, they're going to be pretty disappointed when they notice all of these plot holes and weird stuff that the reviewer didn't notice. I've definitely seen videos online of people reviewing movies, and they actually get the plot wrong, or they misinterpret what's actually happening in the movie. They interpreted it their own way, and how they interpreted it wasn't bad per se, but it's not what actually happened. So I feel like those types of critics should probably, pay more attention, be more analytical about what they're consuming if they're going to be recommending it or not recommending it to other people, because whether or not they like or dislike it could be from their own misinterpretation of what the movie actually was. I do know most critics try to watch something twice for that reason, so that they don't miss anything. And of course, if you're just making one of those first impressions video, it probably doesn't really matter, because those videos try to keep it short and just give you the idea of how they felt about certain things. But anyway, yeah, so that's just how I feel about criticism and reviews in general. I think if you're a good critic, you should be able to explain why you like or dislike something. If you just say, oh, it's bad, then you're not really doing a good job. And there are a lot of critical channels on YouTube that I do enjoy watching. I like watching their analysis of things, even if I don't really agree with their opinion on the movie that they're talking about. And assuming that they do a good job at explaining why they feel a certain way, I think it's interesting teaching myself to understand that different perspective on the movie. I heard this one video essay of this guy who was actually defending Spider-Man 3, saying that it wasn't as bad as people really think that it is. And he basically goes through all the character arcs, and I did find it pretty interesting to hear it through his own voice, even though I mean, Spider-Man 3 is not the best movie, let's be honest here. But that I will agree with him that it's probably not as bad as people think that it is. There are some good things about the movie. But like I said, a lot of people have this idea in their mind that once someone disagrees with them, oh, unfollow, I can't trust you to recommend anything to me anymore. And it's not really a matter of trusting someone's opinion to be in line with yours. It's more of a matter of learning to hear different opinions and make the decision for yourself. But anyway, let me know what you think of criticism, what you define as good criticism and bad criticism. Leave your own thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. If you like this video, remember to leave a like on the video so that I know that you enjoyed. Hang tight, we're gonna get you some more comic reviews up on this channel as soon as I finish reading them. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye! Program restart.